Evening, everyone. Thanks very much for coming, and it's nice to see everyone here. As we can see, we have a nice spread of things. Again, the general apologies to the Zoom audience for flaunting the food in front of you guys. But there's lots of food, and everyone can take. And there's a kitchen over there if you want to wash and get drinks, tea, coffee, and everything like that. The shiur is sponsored today. Actually, especially, sorry, just over here. The shiur is sponsored today by Shari, who's one of our Zoom loyalists. So here we go. Shari, is everyone in the room that you're helping out today? And yes, Shari, in memory of her grandparents, Harry and Addie Bramson. So thank you very much, Shari, for that sponsorship. I'll just pass these out to you guys. We're going to take one and pass around. It should be enough, but otherwise you can do one between two. And really nice to meet everyone. My name is Isaac Ansel Forsyth, originally from Scotland, with Gibraltarian and South African connections, and sort of Canadian spiritual connections. But that's the extent of that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to learning together today. What we try and do here is to try and learn something new, to try and broaden horizons, think a bit deeper about things that we're used to, think about things that we're not used to. So there's a general different topics in the realm of spirituality in some sense. Do come in there. There should be some space over here if you like. Is there a few people? Okay, we can. You know what we can do? We can also gain a space over here if we once they come in. Yeah, close this door. We can close this door. Come in. Hey, it's Ed. Whoa, cool. If you guys come in, then we can get. There's space in the room for you. Yeah, bring that chair. Bring that chair in. Thanks, guys, for tolerating the admin.
This is your jacket, right?
It's not my bit. It's fine. Oh, okay. It's fine. You can move it.
Yeah.
Someone can be bold and come all the way up to the bagels if they like. So just sit at the table as if it was your own dinner table. Welcome. If you want in this door over here, if it's getting distracting for you guys, you can close. You can like jump in and close the door. So whatever is working for you. Okay. But really nice to see everyone, to meet a lot of people here, and looking forward to learning together tonight. So our topic tonight is something called Tikkun HaOlamot. So our bigger picture mini series that we're actually embarking upon right now, we spent quite a lot of time trying to learn about ourselves and understand ourselves from a few different perspectives, and we're really now trying to understand our purpose. What are we here for? So there's one question is who we are, and the other question is what are we here for? And there are of course a few different angles on that issue, and one of those angles in terms of what we are here for, what we are in this world for, is to make the world a better place, to take the world which we were created in the context of and take that really to the next level. And that is true, certainly in a moral and ethical sense. We are wanting to make the world in a better place in terms of that there's more goodness around, that there's more morality around, that we're behaving better, and all this kind of thing, even in terms of practical sense, in terms of difficult situations in the world like poverty and things like that. We're certainly trying to do this, but there's also even a metaphysical view of what it means to make the world a better place, and these are all going to interact with each other. So we are dealing with this idea of making the world a better place. God put us in an imperfect world and calls upon us to be his partners and to actually perfect that. And so we're going to discuss today a few different ways in which we actually can do that, not just through the realm of practicality. In such cases, we'd be quite limited because I don't have so much in terms of financial resources, right? So if it was in terms of solving all the poverty in the world just through my practical means, I'd be quite limited. Or in terms of political influence, I certainly don't have that. So that I wouldn't really be able to do necessarily a huge amount. I could do maybe some, but in terms of the tools that we'll learn about today, you can actually do a huge amount. Every single one of us, regardless of our resources, of our backgrounds and anything like that, there's actually a lot we can do in terms of improving the state of the world and improving people's lives in the world. So that's what we're doing. And so it's a collaborative space. So please come in with questions, comments, and the likes. So with that, let's have a little bit of a look at the first source over here. So we're doing three different sources, which will cover a few different angles of how we can use these spiritual tools to make the world a better place. So this first one over here is from the Nefesh HaChaim. So I'll read over here. If you want to follow, you can. You definitely don't have to. But I put it here in case you want to follow. So Barahu Yibarach et ha'adam v'ishlito al ribe rivan kochot va'olamot ein mispar. God created the human being and he made him in charge of many, many, many forces and worlds with innumerable worlds. So I have to see what does it mean that there's multiple worlds. So we'll discuss that. Umasaram, excuse me, biyado sheyehu hamadaber v'manhigotam al pi kol pratei tenuot ma'asav v'diborav u'machshavotav. That and God put into our hands, He like empowered us, that we would be the ones who are governing all these worlds and all these spiritual forces. According to, you think, what are you going to have to do? Maybe you're going to have magic powers in order to do that. No, it's actually with these very basic things. All the, as you said, all the details of our movements, our actions, our speech, our thoughts, all the different ways that we're acting. Hein latov. So basically, this statement from the Nefesh Chaim is kind of plunging us into the deep end and saying that there are all these worlds out there, and with our everyday actions and speech and thoughts, and even the way we do them, all the pratei tenuot, even just the way we do them. So with all of these, we're going to actually be running the world, as it were. We're going to be able to make this massive difference on a cosmic level. So what are all these things? So this is where the Zoom, you can see which you like better, but there's now going to be a discrepancy between the Zoom and in person because I can't write on the whiteboard in the Zoom, so I gave them a ready-made image. But we're going to do it. We're going to make it together as we go along. So I have the aid of this whiteboard here. Hi, Jakob, come in. There's a seat over here if you like. We can bring more. Okay, so these are the two things that we really need to understand. One is what are these worlds which the Nefesh Chaim is referring to, and the other one is in what sense do our actions and speech and thoughts make a difference to these worlds. You can close it, but should be good. Okay, so the first thing that he's referring to is in terms of worlds. So what is he referring to? So we have the first thing is the worlds that we see around us. So that world actually has a name. It's the world of Asiya. The realm that we live in and just are operating in a day-to-day basis is called the world of Asiya. So that's the first thing that we can have over here, the world of Asiya. And then above that is the realm of the angels, which is called Yitzira. Above that is the realm of the Neshamas, Olam Neshamot, which is called Riya. And even above that, we have another realm, which is called Atzilut, which is like God's divine residence in the world. So this is a little bit of big news in some ways, because I'm kind of used to the world. The world is like the world I see. And okay, maybe there's like things at the bottom of the ocean, which are going to be hard for us to measure. But the truth is, this world is really the tip of the iceberg in this system where there's actually much, much more going on. So this is like the kind of, I guess, 4, 5, 6D map of the world, which we're just representing in this way. So that's in terms of just what he's referring to. So what does it mean that there's multiple worlds? So that there are these multiple realms, and you have these kind of ascending levels of spirituality. So in our world, it's a world which has some spirituality in it. We have souls and the like, but it's a world which is primarily physical. This is the practicality and the physical are like the operating terms of this world. But then as you go up, you see you're already in the realm of angels. So there's something more in the realm of spirituality, which is going on there. Something even higher than that is souls. And obviously at the top, if you have gods, then that's the most spiritual realm that you can have. So this is the general map he's referring to. He talks about it later in the book, but I just wanted to be economical with the space on the page to allow for that. Yes.
You say something about Nefesh Chaim?
Nefesh Chaim is the name of the book.
Right.
Sorry, yes, yeah. So Nefesh Chaim was written by Reb Chaim Volozhiner, who was probably the main student of the Vilna Gaon. So we're talking about roughly about 200 ish years ago, 250 years ago, around that period of time. So it's actually parallel. I made a mistake. I don't know if anyone asked me before, but I made a mistake in the timeline in my head. I always thought that this was I got the Hasidus like Litvish Kabbalah like mixed up in my head, but basically it's pretty much happening at the same time as like the Tanya and things
Is
and things like that.
Rosario of Italy?
So so that's Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, so that's the Ramchal. So we're not going to officially see from him today. So he was earlier actually. He was even earlier. But there's a lot of crossovers between these ideas. So anyway, so this is just kind of like our general map of the world, just in a bit more of a sophisticated way to know what he can be talking about when he's referring to these worlds. So in what sense now, the question is, in what sense can I have any interaction with that? So I'm lucky if I can have an interaction with the world around me. Maybe people that I meet in the same room, but if if you have a lot of political influence, then maybe you can have a bit more interaction with things which are more distant from you. Interestingly enough, with technology, actually, it's becoming less of a discrepancy, interestingly enough, between like the physical, our realm, and like what's going on in spiritual realms. So how can we have these interactions with these spiritual realms? So this brings us to the human being. And then we'll be able to kind of close the circle of what the Nefesh Chaim is referring to. We have a human being over here. We'll do this guy, which is about as sophisticated as my drawings get. And within us, we know that we have a soul, but the truth is we actually have multiple levels of our soul. By the way, just if you know the multiple levels of the soul, then pause your thoughts for a second. If anyone doesn't, do you know any words which are used for the soul in different places in Tanakh or Chazal or anything like that? And I'm saying the English words. So what would be some Hebrew words which we use for the soul? Ruach, yeah, that's one which comes up. Any others?
Shema.
The Shema, right? And even I think at least one more, maybe.
Yes.
So yeah. Right. So it's those are certainly true. I don't know, they don't come to mind for me as much when I think about Tanakh. I think but Nefesh is certainly also one which comes in. So the truth is there are really these there are 5 levels in terms of what you're alluding to, but we'll focus on the 4 for now, these four which are really mostly within our realm of operation. So we have over here different parts for us. So we have our Nefesh, which corresponds to our actions. So we have a soul which is helping us live a physical life, and specifically the part of our soul which helps us do physical things is called our Nefesh. So that's like the basic life. And then above that you have a Ruach. So that's the thing which helps us, which is like the spirituality behind our speech and also our emotional life. And then above that you have Neshama, which is the spirituality behind our thoughts. So that's the main and like the highest level that we're dealing with on a real day-to-day basis. If you're thinking, you're trying to understand things and connect on that intellectual level. So it's your neshama which is enabling you to do so. And there is even one more that we'll talk about now, only a little bit, which is Chaya, because Jacob mentioned it. I wasn't going to mention it, but Jacob mentioned it, so we'll talk about it. And so that Chaya is like an even higher part of your spiritual anatomy, which is that part of you, which is you, but it's kind of like above you. So it's a little bit tricky to get our hands on, but basically it corresponds to Ratzon, which is will. So if you think about it, it's like a part of you which is kind of beyond you, like what you want, what you like deeply desire, what you are inspired by, things like that. So it's you because it's inspiring you, but it's hard to control in the same way as you can have a lot of control over your actions. You can have a good amount of control over your speech. Your thoughts, maybe you don't control what pops into your head, but you can basically, kind of take it to the next stage from there. So hence all of psychology, although there's a few different kind of like philosophies within that. So yeah, agreed. Meaning in terms of what pops into your head, for sure, in terms of what pops into your head, you don't necessarily have control over that. But in terms of what you do with those thoughts, or if you choose to think about something, you can have a bit more control. Then the most subtle thing that we're dealing with is like Ratzon, which is like it's kind of like the dream in some ways. Like, what do I really want? So that's it. So the truth is you can do certain things about that, but it's much harder to think about what does it mean to change what you want than it is to change all the other things. So this is a kind of like the elaboration of really just the detailed view. We know you have a soul, we're kind of confident about that. But there's a bit more. Like I was thinking today that like science is complex, right? There's a system. You don't just say Like how does the body work? I know it works. It's just it's good science. It works. But there's actually a whole. All right, come in. Let's see what we can do about this. Maybe we'll try it and yeah. So, you can only that it might be a little bit loud out there. If you there's a chair. There's room. If you want to put, he just moved the chair from over there. So yeah. I'm not. It's meant. Actually, Brian, would you mind?
Sit next to you.
That's a good idea. You could all just before you do you mind doing me a favor and see if they can turn on the air conditioning? Yeah.
What about Yechidah, by the way?
Yeah.
Along with Yechidah, right?
Yeah. So the truth is there is another even higher level of the soul which is out there as well. Now what about all those people who don't do things for that thing? So so that's the thing. So that's yes. There's a small filter. If you like, there's a chair over here for you. So in terms of doing things without thinking, so the way that we just said it, right? So it's a good question from Yosef over saying, I just said, there's this whole system, behind everything that you do is spirituality, and so it all sounds good. But what about the fact that I'm mostly just living my life and just doing things? I don't usually think about what I do. So what's the story with that? So in many ways, it's marginalizing some elements of our spirituality. We're just discussing that there's different parts of the soul which are relating to different levels of our existence. And some parts of the soul, the neshama, is relating to our thoughts. So what's happening if I act without thinking? So I'm kind of denying my neshama the opportunity to participate, and which you can see is number one, is not ideal. It's not ideal just from kind of that, spiritual, metaphysical perspective, but also from a practical perspective. That whole idea of thinking before you act has now taken on a whole new meaning, that there's meant to be this whole process of, you have the dream and then you think about it and you analyze it and then you articulate it and then you bring it into action. So the dream is to incorporate all these parts of our spirituality together. Did you mention anything about the air conditioning?
Oh, the AC. I was thinking about the chairs too.
Oh, that's also good.
You're better than me at multitasking.
Does anyone mind doing me a favor? Do you mind doing me a favor? See if anyone can turn on the AC. Just shout out, can anyone turn on the AC? And someone who is responsible should hopefully answer. Yeah. So this is it. So we have a little bit about we have this general map of the world, which is a bit bigger than we're used to. We also have a bit of a map of our own spirituality. Right. All right, interesting. Well, I'll do it. I can do it if you want. Okay, let's hope for the best. Okay, otherwise our spirituality is going to have to override our physical thermostats over here. It's getting somewhere. Okay, good. Okay. Okay, so maybe should we close this at this point? I don't know.
I'll take all the help.
Yeah. Okay, this is the compromise. Sorry, you probably get the worst of it all because you're like crimes. Okay, everyone. So basically, we're discussing this idea overall of our purpose, and one of the purposes is to make the world a better place. And once we bring in a spiritual angle, we're going to find that there's actually a lot more angles to make the world a better place than there would be if we were just dealing in physical terms. In physical terms, what I have my body, I have my money, I have my kind of social influence. It's not necessarily going to go that far, but if we add in our spirituality, we'll find that it can go very far indeed. And this is basically the kind of correspondence and essentially the punchline to this thing of the Nefesh HaChaim. Nefesh HaChaim saying, with all our thoughts and speech and action, we can actually do something. We can actually make changes to the world in a cosmic way. So how does that work? It basically works as follows. If you hadn't guessed it already, so our nefesh is going to correspond to the world of Asiya. So what does that mean for us? What that means is when we are doing good things, like let's say you are doing chesed for someone else, you're doing a nice thing for someone, like Chaim just said he helps out pensioners. He said you help out older people. So doing kind things for someone. So what that's doing is obviously it's doing the practical, tangible, kind thing for them. What it's also doing is setting off sparks in the world of Asiya. and you're actually having this metaphysical positive benefit, bringing in light to the world of Asiya. So that's what you're doing with your physical actions. Then, in terms of our ruach, so that's going to correspond to Yetzirah. So we said our ruach is that which relates to our speech. So what that means is when we are saying good words, so there's all kinds of things, but to say a kind word to another person, to have an encouraging conversation with someone else, to allow them to consult you and to console someone when they're having a hard time, all these things in the realm of speech that we do, again, they not only have the practical effect for the person sitting right in front of you, but they also have this spiritual effect, bringing light into the world of Yetzirah, which is corresponding to our faculty of speech. Moving on, in terms of our neshama, so our neshama is corresponding to Bria. So when we are having positive thoughts which are, for example, like, you give someone the benefit of the doubt, or let's say, without going into it too much, sorry, Zoom, I'm not very good at the up and down camera situation. There was a person who I felt kind of slighted me the other day. This happened, and so I was like in a bad mood at him, basically. And today I've been trying, like starting yesterday, and then moving on to today, I'm trying to think more positively about that person and think of all the things that, it probably was a mistake, and even if it wasn't a mistake, like he probably didn't realize, exactly what he was doing, or maybe I've interpreted the whole thing wrong, and all these kinds. So this is like the mental gymnastics involved in giving someone a benefit of the doubt. So what's going on there? That's the work of the neshama. And what happens when you're working your neshama for the positive? So it's bringing in light to the world of Bria. And also this one is the most subtle one here, over here with Chaya, because again, how much control do we have over our ratzon, over our will? We do have some, but it's a little subtle. But there are certain things that we can do to even make a positive impact on the world of Atzilut, which is very interesting. Just the one note I'll say on this is really just a teaser, because it's going to take a longer time to understand such a thing. But one thing, for example, is the Shmona Esrei, is the Amida. The Chazal designed the Amida in such a way that it would be able to have an impact all the way up there. So we see that there's a whole kind of like science behind the design of the Shemona Esrei, and this realm is like a little bit higher than we're used to being able to affect with our day-to-day actions, but there are certain things that we can do which can even affect that realm. But basically, in sum, out of all that, what we have is doing very ordinary things, to act in a certain way and to speak in a certain way and to think in a certain way. And yeah, even though these are quite simple things, which we're all doing all of the time, so we're actually making cosmic changes, even with our everyday actions. So this is like a kind of a big idea, and this is kind of contained, as I say, the Nefesh Chaim does elaborate, but in many ways, this is what he was referring to in his lines. So just to take this point to pause and reflect a little bit, what do you think about this? Is this something that is making sense, not making sense?
Where are these worlds?
Yeah, so basically they're already, once you go above, so to speak, this world, so we're dealing with realms which are pure spirituality. So they don't necessarily have map locations, because our maps are of physical. So usually you'll find them represented like this in terms of higher, because when we talk about spirituality and physicality, we talk about like higher and lower. But you can also talk about them in terms of inner and outer, pinimi and chitzoni. So you can find, if you look on, I sometimes look on the Google for Kabbalistic arcs. I'm usually looking for like poster designs and stuff. We've got that guy in Sfat always like making stuff. So you'll also find sometimes representations of the same thing, which are inner and outer. But essentially, what they're essentially a metaphor trying to represent what does it mean for something to be more spiritual than the next. So you won't be able to plot it on a map, basically, but you can view it as inner, a bit like the soul is the inner aspect of you. So these are like the inner and more inner aspects of this world. So that's kind of like the short answer, is that they don't have a physical geographical location. They're in the spiritual realm, but they are the penimiut of this world.
Somehow connected.
Yeah.
So spot doesn't count.
Because this is the lowest world, right?
Yeah. So that's exactly. So at the same time as we are in the lowest world with, as we're saying, the currency of this world is physicality. People want to know it's all about action and it's all about what can you do for me materially and tangibly. And yet, as we're hiding inside this world is infinity, basically, and in different levels. So, Gaio.
Just a short question. Is this just a Kabbalistic idea, or it's also like in Torah?
So it was both. So the approach of the Nefesh Chaim and probably others as well, is that there's not really a separation between the two of those. So the Nefesh Chaim especially, works of Chassidus do this to some extent, but they're not as into it. The Nefesh Chaim is really into proving the things that he tells you from sources in the Gemara or in the Tanakh and things like that. So he'll bring a lot of evidence for these kind of things, even though they're more spoken out in the Kabbalistic sources like the Zohar and the Arizal and Rechaim Vital and things like that. But he will always bring you back. So I can show, if you want, I can show you some of the places where these things are alluded to in Tanakh. So it's your choice, basically, in terms of how you view that answer. So Nefesh Chaim would say it's for sure also in the kind of main corpus of the Torah, but it's obviously different approaches to how those interact. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Just on a brief historical question, so time of the legend, who's the primary student of Vilna Gaon,
Yeah.
who completely separated from the
Yeah.
Hasidim.
Yeah.
No student of this,
Yeah.
but this sounds a lot of Hasidus.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Yeah. So basically, this is this is becoming the most common question I get asked. And I have theories as to why that is. But basically, what comes out is that if you actually read these, how to put it, when people think about Litvak and Chassid, or even Misnagdim, most people don't use that term, apart from Chabad use it about people who don't like Chabad, they call them Misnagdim. But most people don't call themselves Misnagdim anymore. But nevertheless, there certainly were, and kind of are, but mostly were, ideological battles between different groups. This is only in the Ashkenazi world as well, but there's also kind of parallel stuff going on in the Sephardi world. But the truth is, if you actually read the texts themselves, you'll find that they're basically agree on 95% of things. But number one, they do disagree on a few. And number two, the things that they agree on, they often speak about it in a slightly different way. So they'll speak about, as I say, like the Nefesh Chaim, he's super, he may be boring sometimes for some people who are into Chassidut, maybe, because he's like all about, he'll bring you like multiple sources for the ideas he's doing. So he's talking about it in that way. Whereas, Chassidut might be maybe a bit more emphasizing the meaning and the heart element. Nefesh Chaim maybe more emphasizing the head and the intellectual element. But they're really, usually I find more often than not, they're talking about basically the same thing from slightly different angles, slightly different terminologies. So basically it turns out whatever their big machloket was much more subtle than we're used to. We're just like, oh, they just disagree on everything. But actually, it's more subtle than that. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
So the first thing I thought about when I saw this, I don't know where I thought about it from, but the Kedusha of Tfilat Amidah.
Yeah.
So we don't understand. I mean, it's like the only thing I know of it is, okay, so there's part of it from Yeshayahu's vision. And then, but it definitely feels like there's something there. I can't put my finger on it. Is there anything that like you can kind of hint at?
I can hint at it. I was hoping to actually next week go into it in a bit more depth.
Okay.
So I'll give it as maybe I shouldn't, then people come back next week. I'm not sure. I'll say from two angles. Number one, just in terms of context, and then also in terms of content. So in terms of context, the Nefesh Chaim later, in the second section of his book, he really talks about tefillah and like really goes into this in like a massive way. And so he points out that those who wrote the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, this prayer. So it was the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. This group of people had prophets among them. They were like a serious group of people, and it took them like it was a big endeavor to do this thing. And yet, if you look at it superficially, you could kind of see like probably quite similar to a lot of religions, prayers. What do you need? You need sustenance. You want health. you talk about God's greatness, you could think about it like that, but just in terms of what it took in order, like you see the project that it was. So it seems that there has to be something there, kind of like as you're saying from that angle. Like we know apparently like, it took like the best minds of the generation among whom were prophets to compose it. So there's clearly something from that angle. And I'll just mention for now, even we'll hopefully get into it more. But the truth is, if you notice, there are actually 4 sections of the tefillah of the prayer order, and they are actually climbing these ladders. So just say for it, can elaborate another time, but this is the korbanot in the morning brachot. Birkat HaShachar is the Tikkun Asiyah. It's working with the world of Asiyah. Then up here, you have the Psukei de Zimra, which is like song and praise, and that's climbing up to the world of Yitzira. And then you have the Shema and the brachot, which is like about faith and also just understanding how Hashem is one in the world. So that's relating to the world of Bria. And then you arrive at the Shemona Esrei, which is up in the realm of gods and relating already to Atzilut. So it's just a teaser as to the fact that there's actually there's a big science behind this whole the whole tefillah business. Anyone any other thoughts? Yeah.
If it's Monasteries already at Silas, then what's the tefillahs after this Monastery?
A good question. So further teasers is that it's interesting. There's actually one thing. So the general answer is it's coming back down again. This is what I always didn't used to do when I played football, aka soccer, for some people in the room, and I suffer for it, as I never did a warm down, and I can't. I'm basically like I'm totally inflexible. I can't. It's like I can't touch my toes even close. Anyway, but part of the thing is because there's even on a spiritual level, there's such a thing as a warm down. It's like you just climbed, so you're in Shemaim basically. So in order to actually come back down step by step and bring that spiritual inspiration into the world, it requires stages. So it goes to Ashrei, and then it's a machloket in terms of Nesach Ashkenaz and other Nesachot. But let's say by the end you get to like Aleinu, and that's already bringing back down into the world. There is one thing which is hitting a higher level than the Shemona Esrei. Give you a higher level. Anyone know what that is?
The Kiddush.
You could guess it. Yeah, that's true. Well, we'll get to that in presently. Actually, we'll lead on to that. Actually, the Tachanun is like the Vidui and then the Tefillah Tapayim and all the kind of things, which is in Tachanun after, is actually the highest level of prayer, which was a big chiddush for me because I think it's also to some extent considered optional. So it's like you're really not thinking about that, but it's actually the highest level. So hopefully more to come on that. But yeah, so that's what the post Shemona Esrei part is doing. Okay, so with that, let's mention, I don't think we'll read them all inside in terms of for time. We can read them inside and give a general overview. So this next section I called Eating Bagels, which leads on from Brian's when he said the Kiddush is the holiest part of the whole davening. So it turns out it could be Brian may be right after all. So what we're doing here is we got the general map with Nefesh HaChaim talking about changing the world. And I should just also say, by the way, that it's not just this light that we bring into the world and the worlds for that matter, and these different realms. It doesn't just stay there. It all trickles down and has an effect down here. So by you, giving someone the benefit of the doubt in your mind, and they'll never know about it, and no one will ever. It's just a private thing that you did yourself. You bring light into the world of Bria that has a trickle down effect, and the world becomes a slightly better place. And who knows? It could be, it can be for you. It could be for anyone. Honestly, there could be a certain, let's say someone is feeling down and they just somehow out of nowhere they have a moment of inspiration. They're feeling a little bit better. Where did that come from? Where do these things come from? As you're saying, where do the thoughts in your heads come from to some extent? So they come from above. Where's above? This. So this idea of bringing light into the spiritual worlds, it doesn't just stay there, it comes, it actually has a real impact around here. So that's how people like me, who have no political influence, can have influence over Brazil and Japan and South Africa. Even if I'm not in Durban anymore, we can, all these things that we do can have a universal impact. But with that, so let's talk about the Kiddush. So AKA eating bagels, AKA something else that the Tanya is going to say. So it's I always get a kick, as you were mentioning, I always get a kick out of putting the Tanya and the Nefesh HaChaim like on the same source sheet. So there we go. Apparently Rav Kook had a picture of, I think it was I can't remember if it was the Vilna Gaon or the Nefesh HaChaim. I think it was Nefesh HaChaim on his wall next to the picture of the Balatanya. So everyone always used to say it's like what are you doing? Like okay, you can't do that. It's not aser. I said in my heart they're right next to each other. That's so anyway. So we got it on the source sheet right next to each other. So that's good. Okay, so let's just read a little bit of this. So ha'ochel bisra shmeina de Torah v'shota yayin mavusam. If a person is eating really nice meat and what's it called, ox meat, and having really nice wine, laharti ba'ato Hashem, to open their mind up to God, alu Torato, and for His Torah, keda amarava chamra v'reicha. Like Rava says, he's quoting the Gemara where he says wine and nice smells. The rest of I don't know what was the point in making it an etc. Just the next word is mafukhin, which means like to make wise. So he said wine made him wise, and the nice smells made him wise. So anyway, so that's Rava. So what about that? Which is you're eating it, for example, to open up your mind to God or to the Torah, or bishvil kadei lekayim mitzvat onig Shabbat v'yom tov. There's some days where it's actually a mitzvah to have nice food. So if you're eating the nice food and having nice wine and things like that for those purposes, so if you're doing that, azai nitbarer chiyut habasar v'ayayin. Then the life force inside the meat and the wine is nitzbarer. It means clarified. It means it's kind of like the word I'm looking for is it is discerned. You basically like take the life force from in these nishba mi klipat noga, which is hiding inside the certain kind of klipa, which we'll talk about, and then va'ola Hashem ka'ola ucha korban, and it goes up to God like an ola and like a sacrifice. Ola is a certain kind of sacrifice. I don't know why I say ola and a sacrifice. It's a subcategory. I'm not sure why that is. But basically, what's the system? In a very general sense, he just said the kiddush is holy. So that there's such a thing called eating, where you can be like bringing a korban, you can be like bringing a sacrifice, and it's something that's going up to the heavens. So in a very, very general sense, what is that? Obviously requires more, but just as a taste for ourselves over here, thinking about how our everyday actions are affecting the world. So basically everything in the world is made up of, in general, you can say two aspects. It's made up of klipa and or. It's made up of external aspects, which is at least physicality. Often it has a negative charge to it, but it's at least the physicality. And then you have the spirituality, the light, inside that thing, whereas as the Balatani said here, the chiyut, the life force inside that thing. So it's not just us, it's not just humans, not even just animals who have this kind of body soul kind of dynamic thing going on. Even everything in the world even has some kind of spirituality inside of it. But in general, it's especially for from kind of animal down the way, animal, plant life, inanimate objects, this table, the spirituality is locked up inside of it. It's not something which is really working with in any way. But there is a way that it can be, the spirituality can be accessed and can be elevated. And that is, for example, to eat that thing with a positive intention. So if someone is eating, so as we are doing today with bagels, and you could be with Kiddush and choose menu for next week and put in your votes. So to do this with some kind of positive intention, I'd say to open up your mind to God, to feel better about Avodas Hashem. I would add in here humbly, I think also to be in a good mood for other people. I think that's also considered a positive intention, because Ben Adam L'Chavero is part of the Torah, right? So that's also called for Hashem to some extent. So these just eating with a little bit of a positive intention helps you access the spirituality inside that thing and elevate that thing. So even eating is obviously, that's like the most basic thing we do. We kind of know that, we've heard here and there that like eating can be a spiritual thing, but how in what sense can eating be a spiritual thing? So this is the mechanism. This is the tikkun which goes inside eating, is that there's this bagel here, this poor bagel. If someone doesn't eat it by the end, the spirituality is going to be locked up inside of that. No, it's not necessarily going to see the light of day. But if someone were to eat it, as people have been doing for Hashem in the context of the shir, for sure we're doing well. And the bagel is giving you energy to learn, to think, to do all these things. So then basically that bagel has just had an amazing destiny. It came from Bagel Cafe. It was okay. It's not a bad start, but its end was amazing. Its end was amazing. So that's also a thing that we can do to elevate the physical world. Is that? Oh, sorry, we got a question from the Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah. So, does it work the opposite way? If you're eating bad food, do you manage to get rid of that, or how does it work? Bad food, fast food, whatever.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the question was, what about bad food? So at least what we can say is bad intentions, or like rubbish intentions, let's say. So if you eat without these positive intentions, then minimally we can say it doesn't do the positive spiritual things. Could be it does even maybe slightly negative things, because then the light inside the thing just stays together with the klipa, and then you just consume that whole thing. So it could be it's not so good for you. So at least in terms of the way that we eat, so there's certainly a better and a worse way of eating. That's for sure true. I heard this thing, but I don't really understand it. So I'll tell you it, but I just tell you I don't understand it. Is that since that junk food, like this mechanism doesn't work for junk food, because like the whole thing is like the whole klipa and or is like all messed up, and then like you can't separate the light from inside the physicality. But I heard that I should, it's hard for me to understand, because like bread, I mean, that sounds like it's more about processed food than it is about junk food, and bread is like obviously a big part of Judaism. So I don't really understand that, but there's a person who's a Talmud Chacham who told me that once. So do with that what you will. But also, yeah, it's a little bit hard to live up to. I contacted him after. So like, what are you telling me? Like, can you tell me this? It's so hard. Yeah.
The spirituality connected with eating, connected with the berachot
Yeah.
that you say. So
Yeah.
like saying nothing is taken for granted.
Exactly. So
This just
Yeah.
this
Sorry.
at least what I think, or I think. But on the other hand, I think that the other thing connected with food spirituality, or connected with balance or unbalance, or what to eat and giving the right,
Yeah.
junk food, or connected with meat that also again we kill an animal and we eat it. So also the spirituality in this sense is hard to see, because we because we kill,
Yeah.
in order so this animal to eat.
Yeah. So I'll say a little bit about both of the points, but it's really good point. So one point in terms of one of the points was in terms of brachot, and how the brachot, the blessings, are related to elevating the act of eating and spirituality. So one of the things we say, one of the things is that when you do a bracha, you're accessing this world of Yetzirah. So you're already kind of like taking the act up from this world, and you're accessing higher worlds. That's one thing. And another thing is also it's an opportunity to have a positive intention. So it's actually it's like it's obviously more than this. Obviously, it's deep stuff. But in some ways, it's like a little trick that that Chazal gave you in order to think about what you do before you do it. And I don't know, it's more than that, but it is partly that, to give you an opportunity to have a positive intention. So when you think about gods before you're eating the food, so then already the eating of the food is going to tap more into the system. In terms of the other points about kind of the challenge in understanding that our eating could really be spiritual, because the act of eating, at least let's say in terms of animals. So I do have fish, but I've stayed away so far from doing meat options. There have been requests for meat options, but the act of going about everything which is involved in that involves like killing an animal. So how do we feel about that? So it's a massive topic. I don't necessarily feel equipped either in terms of my knowledge or in time to do it, but I will say one thing that Rav Kook says. But again, there's a lot to say about the topic. But so one thing that we see from this is that there is a certain thing of elevating the spirituality inside something which doesn't necessarily have the opportunity to do it by itself. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily like so pleasant, but there is that general idea going on. Rav Kook does say, though, that there is going to be a process. Whilst we are in a meat-eating time period right now as when there's going to be Mashiach and a few different stages. He says there's different stages. But he says he says meat eating does have a certain function now, but the spiritual reality of the world is going to kind of grow out of that. And the meat won't need this tikkun anymore, or the animals, let's say, they won't necessarily need this tikkun anymore because the world is going to be up and up and up. Once the animals don't need the tikkun, then we will basically stop eating meat, and the sacrifices we bring will not necessarily be the animal sacrifices anymore. So it's obviously a big topic because it's a very challenging thing to understand, because the prophets do talk about bringing animal sacrifices in the future. But there is, relating to your point, that there is a certain dream in a certain way to even spiritually grow out of that idea as the world elevates entirely towards spirituality. So I think what we'll do is we'll pause the share here. I know there's another source that we didn't quite get into, so hopefully maybe we'll get to that next time. But just to kind of summarize some of the points that we've been making is that we have this purpose to make the world a better place. But what we've kind of seen from all this, by tapping into the spirituality a little bit and looking a bit more about who we are and what the world is and how these are going to correspond, even our very, very mundane activities, we've been exploring the idea that really all of us can make the world a better place. All of us have this access to purpose and meaning and being very productive, even if we don't have really anything else necessarily going for us. You know, you don't have to have a good job. You don't need to have lots of money. You don't need to have all this stuff. This is really something which is very accessible to all of us at really every stage, that we can, with these gifts that we've been given, our thoughts, our speech, our actions, even our activities of things like eating, we can all actually do something positive for the world. So that's thoughts for them. So I'll still be around. Anyone's welcome to. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good night, Zoom. Thanks again, Sherry. Oh.